Hi guys, welcome to today's video. So in this video I'm going to be talking about BookTok books and whether I think you should read them. I have about 20 books to talk about. Some of them are series, some of them are standalone. I'm just going to talk about my thoughts about each book and whether I think you should read them or not. I've been reading consistently for about over a year now, and during that time I've read a lot of popular BookTok books, more than I would like, but at the same time there are some amazing popular BookTok books. There are some I personally don't like. None of these books I particularly hate. Some of them are on the lower scale, but most of them I enjoyed or I loved. Some of them I didn't like as much. I'm going to go into my feelings on each book and let you know the things I liked, the things I didn't like. A little disclaimer before we get into this video. These are all my opinions. There are no good or bad books, for the exception of like offensive or like harmful books. But all of these books, they're not good or bad. This is just my opinion. Reading is very subjective. Everyone has their own thoughts and feelings. Some books that I hate, you guys might love, and some books that I love, you guys might hate. So yeah, just like a little reminder that these are all my opinions. If you think you'd like one of the books that I don't like, then of course pick it up. And also I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings if I don't like a book that you love. I know personally when someone doesn't like a book that I love, I feel attacked. I feel personally attacked, but it's good to just remind yourself that reading is very subjective and everyone has their own thoughts and feelings. Yeah, this is all just purely my opinions on each of these books. And I have romance, fantasy, and literary fiction, and we're just going to go into each one. I will not be going into like what each book is about in like detail, because I feel like firstly that would take me way too long. Also, these books are really popular, so you most likely already know what all of these books are about, or most of them. So I'm just going to be going into all my thoughts on these books. Okay, I'm kind of nervous. I have so many books in front of me right now. Okay, I'm just gonna start. We have Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is a newer BookTok book that's become popular. It is a cowboy romance. Cowboy romances are really popular at the moment. This is a this is a brother's best friend's romance. Don't mind that the cover of this book has been chewed. That was my kitten. Anywho, this is the first book in a romance series. I gave this book a 3.5, I think. I'll put all my ratings on screen. I read this book really fast, but I personally found it kind of boring. I feel like this type of trope has a lot of room to be really interesting, but I personally found this book really boring. I didn't really care for either of the characters. I felt like there was a lot of tension at first, and then it kind of drifted away and it felt very insta love. And apart from the actual relationship, I felt like both of their lives weren't that interesting. There was some representation for ADHD, and our female main character Clementine was going through anxiety and having anxiety attacks after a traumatic incident. I thought that was nice that it was represented in this book, and I liked how the male main character Luke dealt with her panic attacks. But I feel like overall this book was kind of boring. I don't know if I'll continue. Well, actually I have the second book in the series, so I should continue it. I don't know if it'll be any better, but yeah, I feel like go into this book not expecting amazing things. Some people really love this book, but I've seen a lot of mid reviews, so I think go into this book expecting a fast, easy read and nothing phenomenal or amazing. In the theme of cowboy romances, we have Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series. This is a extremely popular series. I feel like this is the blueprint for cowboy romances. This really made cowboy romances popular. I've only read the first book in the series. I read this recently. I think this was the first cowboy romance I read. I gave this book a 4 stars, or maybe a 4.25. I really can't remember my ratings very well, but I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book. I enjoyed it, but I also wasn't that interested in the characters. I liked the writing. Both of the characters went through some mental stuff personally. They had a lot going on in their life and they really had to work through it, and they really helped each other work through it. But I felt it was also kind of boring. I felt like it wasn't amazing. I didn't expect amazing things because I haven't heard the best things about this first book, but I did enjoy it. One thing though, I did talk about this in my reading vlog for quite a while, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but one thing that really upset me is towards the end there's a ableist line, and that really like threw me for a loop. Like that really upset me, firstly because there's no reason for that to be in this book. It could have easily been edited out. Like it's just unnecessary to say things like that. Secondly, no one has talked about it. I have not seen a single person mention this line that's in this book, and that also kind of upsets me. Yeah, that kind of put a really sour taste in my mouth towards this book. Now I have negative feelings towards it, even though I was enjoying the book. Yeah, I don't know. I really liked this small town aspect. I liked the family dynamic. There is a big family in this book, and you see characters from this family in the other books in this series, and I'm hoping to continue this series very soon. I'm really excited for the second book, but I feel like if you're into romance books, cowboy romances, if you're curious, I think everyone should give this series a go. I mean, I've only read the first book, but I've heard such amazing things about the series. I don't know, I just love the small town aspect. Okay, next we have Brutal Prince by Sophie Luck. This is a dark romance. I think this is the first dark romance I've ever read. I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 4 stars. It wasn't the most interesting. I feel like it was a quick, easy read. It wasn't amazing. I liked the characters. It was like a real enemies to lovers because both of the main characters really hated each other. Like they wanted to kill each other, and they end up with it's like a marriage of convenience sort of thing. They're both a part of mafia families as well that are like rival mafia families, and the two main characters just really hate each other. But I really liked how realistic the enemies to lovers was, because I find in a lot of romance books where there's enemies to lovers, it's not really enemies, like you just hate the other person or don't like them, but this felt like a real enemies to lovers. I will say though, I feel like we kind of jumped from enemies to them being in love kind of quickly. It moved from them being enemies to then being like putting up with each other to then being in love quite quickly, and I feel like I wish we got a better gradual I don't know what words I don't know what words I'm okay, anyways. Yeah, I feel like it wasn't very gradual, kind of, but it was fun, and I'm intrigued to continue the series. I haven't heard the best things about the other books in the series, but I still want to continue it because it was fun, and I'm interested to see what the rest of the series is like. I wasn't that really interested in the mafia part. That part I found kind of boring when they're like fighting and like killing people. I'm like, whatever. But the romance was a lot of fun. Okay, I think this is the lowest rated book I have out of all of these. Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I am planning to unhaul this book. I gave this a 2.5 stars. I really didn't like this. The romance I did not like whatsoever. I didn't like either of the characters, and I felt like the romance was just really bad. This is a Peter Pan retelling, but with like a dark twist. Our male main character Hook uses our female main character Wendy to like get to her father. Firstly, I don't like that, but like I expected to not like that since it's a dark romance, but just overall, I really didn't like this book. Hook was just gross. The things he thought and said was just disgusting. Wendy was just really naive. I didn't like either of the characters. Wendy was also just really boring. I feel like there was no romance there either. It was just weird. Yeah, it was mostly just weird. I don't think I'll continue this series. This is like a quick, easy read, which I liked how quick it was to read, but I also didn't enjoy it. So, but some people do love this book, so maybe it's your cup of tea. It definitely wasn't mine. Oh my god, I haven't talked about this book in so long. Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I love this book so much. I gave this book a 5 stars. It is like a 6-star book. This book, it's so good. Please pick this book up. So many people absolutely love this book, so I feel like there's a high chance you will also love it. Our main character, Archer, is mute. He can't speak. He was in a tragic incident as a child, and he's grown up most of his life alone and very sheltered. And then Bree moves in to his like small town, and she meets Archer, and she really tries to become friends with him, and they fall in love, obviously. And it's just such a beautiful book. It's also such a sad book. I cried multiple times reading this book, and I typically don't like sad books, but the love in this book was so good. Like I felt the love these characters had for one another like in my bones. Like I felt it so much, and that just made me even sadder during some parts of this book. Just everything Archer went through. Also, Bree has gone through so much, and this is just such a beautiful story. I really want to read the other books in this series. It was so beautifully written, and it just like spoke to my soul. Like it was so good. Bree and Archer are just made for each other. They have so much love for each other. It's just, I loved it so much. I highly recommend this book. Next we have The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This is a part of the Windy City series. It's the second book in the series. I never read the first book. They're interconnected standalones, so you don't have to read them in order. And I just personally didn't think I'd like the first book, so I didn't pick it up, and I still don't think I'm gonna pick it up. But we have a best friends brothers romance. Our male main character Shay is a basketball player, and our female main character, what was her name, Indy, she moves in with him, so it's close proximity, and then they also fake date. This book is really good for people that love acts of service. I feel like Shay really showed his love to Indy in so many ways. I was kicking my feet and giggling reading this book. I like understand why so many people love this book. I think I gave it a 4.25. I think why my rating was lowered, because I think it would have been a 4.5, but I feel like it went on for too long. It is like around 500 pages. I feel like it dragged on for too long. It definitely could have been shorter, and I think there was just a few little things I didn't personally like, but overall I really like this book, and I highly recommend picking it up. Just the way Shay showed his love was just everything. Also because Indy is a vegetarian, and he like did things for her, like she would eat veggie bacon, like fake bacon, and he would just start eating that as well with her. And that's such a little thing, but I thought that was just so sweet. Just so many little things that just really built up and just was overall really sweet. Also, one other thing, I think towards the ending something happened and I didn't think it was the most realistic, so that kind of took away from my rating. But yeah. Okay, next we have, this is more of like an author that I'm talking about. If you've watched any of my videos, I mentioned this in almost like every single one of my videos, but Ali Hazelwood is my favorite author. I love all of her books so much. I could talk about her for hours and hours and hours, but I couldn't do this video without mentioning her books. I've rated all of her books 5 stars except for Bride, that I gave a 4.25. So I'm not going to talk about each book too much because I've already talked about them a million times, and I feel like I don't have a lot to say about each book individually. I just love all of them so much. So her STEM adult romances, The Love Hypothesis was the first romance book I ever read, I think, and I adored it. I absolutely loved it. I wonder how I would feel about it now since I've read so much more romance, but I do truly think I would still absolutely love it. And then we have Love on the Brain. I really loved. If I had to rank them, I would say Love on the Brain at the bottom, then The Love Hypothesis, and then Love Theoretically. I love this book with all of my heart. It is my favorite book of all time. I don't know, I just feel like it spoke to me. Like it felt like this book was written for me, and I feel like that with a lot of Ali Hazelwood's books. There's just something like magical about them. Like they're just so good, and I don't know how she does it. I really don't. They honestly like overwhelm me how much I love them and how much I feel seen by her characters and how much I relate to them, and the romance is just beautiful, and I don't know how she does it, but I just always love her books. They're also so funny. I love her humor. It is like a quirky humor, but I just absolutely love it. Also, these books are all like science romance books, which I personally hate science. I hate science. I don't understand it. I never did. I absolutely despise science. But I loved these books so much. They make the romances more interesting as well, the way that science is like involved in the stories. And then we have her YA book, Checkmate. I loved. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about this book because I'm not the biggest fan of YA, but I knew there was a big chance I would love it because it's Ali Hazelwood, and I did love it. I gave it a 5 stars. It also is about chess, which I don't like chess. I don't know how to play. It's too confusing for me. But I have liked other chess media, like movies and stuff, so I thought there was a big chance I would enjoy this book, and I obviously did. And this is the same as her other romances. It was such a beautiful story, and I just loved it. And then for Bride, this book I was really excited for, and I think that kind of let me down a bit because I had such high expectations. But like I can't help it because I just love all of Ali Hazelwood's books that I'm gonna have high expectations. Also because it's like a fantasy paranormal romance, I was also so excited because she had never written something like that before, and it is more paranormal than fantasy. I was expecting more fantasy, but the reasons why I gave it a lower rating is the romance I felt like moved really quickly. I felt like it was moving naturally until the end where things really picked up and it didn't really make sense to me. Also, the third act breakup I really didn't like. The things the male main character Lo said and did really annoyed me. I feel like Ellie Hazelwood usually has really good third act breakups, so that surprised me. Also, the like paranormal mystery I didn't find the most interesting. I feel like towards the end when everything was revealed, it felt kind of rushed. I feel like so much information was just thrown at me, and I feel like in quite a few Ellie Hazelwood books she has like a little mystery side plot, and some of them are a bit hit or miss, like Love on the Brain. That one was a bit iffy, but they're also just fun. I feel like in this book the mystery was more at the forefront and I didn't really enjoy it that much. But yeah, overall I still really like this book. Like, it was written by Ellie Hazelwood. Of course I'm still gonna like it, and I would recommend picking up all of her books. My guide to her books would be start with The Love Hypothesis. I guess it's up to you what you want to start with. Maybe start with Love theoretically, since that's my favorite one. I feel like this one was a bit harder to understand with the science aspect at first. I feel like the first like maybe 20 pages are kind of confusing. The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain are definitely easier to understand with the science aspect, but it's up to you what you want to start with. I recommend all of her books. We're almost done with the romance. We have one series left. So the Kings of Sin series. This is the first 3 books in this series. I think it's overall a 7-book series, but I think only up to 1 to 4 is out right now. I haven't read the 4th one yet. I'm really excited to, but I have read the first 3. So this series is by Anna Wong. These are the first books by her I've read. So we have King of Wrath. I gave a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. They're all billionaire romances. This was a marriage of convenience, and I enjoyed this book, but I felt like it was kind of boring. Like, it felt like a lot of other billionaire romances. It didn't feel that different from other ones I'd read, and it was also Grumpy Ex Sunshine, but it was also like a fun, easy read. Secondly, we have King of Pride by Anna Huang. This book really disappointed me. I had really high expectations for this book because we saw glimpses of the characters in this book in the first one, King of Wrath, and I was just so excited for their book, and I was really disappointed. I felt like this book was really boring. There weren't really any interesting tropes. There was kind of a forbiddenness because Isabella, the female main character, worked at this fancy exclusive club that Kai was like a member of, so you're not supposed to be in a relationship with the workers or anything. But I feel like it wasn't that serious. Like, Isabella was bartending there and that's not her dream job. She wants to be a writer, so she can just quit and they can be together, you know? And I feel like that was the only interesting trope. I found both of the characters kind of boring. I liked the writing aspect. Isabella was really struggling with her purpose in life, like not knowing what she wanted to do, not believing in herself and stuff, which I liked, but at the same time, I found the story kind of overall boring and I was really disappointed. And so that led me to be really nervous for this book because I also hadn't heard the best things about King of Greed, and I had like average feelings towards the series so far. So I was really nervous about this book, but this is my favorite in the series so far. I gave it a 4.25. This book was a lot of fun. We have a marriage and turmoil trope, so our characters are married and they've been married for 10 years, but Alessandra, our female main character, wants a divorce because the last like many years of their relationship they have grown apart, and Alessandra has been very unhappy with their marriage, but Dominic does not want to leave her. He does not want her to leave. And so he really like begs for her and grovels and does everything he can. And I was very back and forth in this book. I was like, obviously I didn't want to root for Dominic because he had not treated her with the respect and love she deserved. But the way he groveled for her was so sweet. And also we got flashbacks of when they first fell in love, like 10 years ago when they were in college. And that was so sweet to see those flashbacks, which usually I don't like second chance romances and I don't really like flashbacks in romance books because I feel like it's not as special to me. Like, I like to see the characters really get to know each other and fall in love. I don't like to see the flashbacks and I feel like I don't know all the history, but for some reason in this book it really worked. I feel like this is a really hard trope to pull off, and I feel like Anna Wong did a really good job, and I felt a lot reading this book more than the other books, and so I feel like this one deserves a higher rating from me, and I just overall enjoyed it. So I would recommend reading this series so far. I'm really excited for the fourth book, King of Sloth, because I'm just really excited for these characters, but I've heard mixed things, so I'm nervous. I would recommend this series. Okay, I've only just finished the romance. Let's go into the literary fiction since I have a shorter pile of literary fiction. Let's get into it. So I have 2 Japanese translated books. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like there's this quality to them that's just really good. They're mostly all really heartwarming and just fun, quick stories that are also kind of enlightening. Also, there's a lot of cat translated Japanese stories that are just so good. And so a lot of them are really popular. These are some of the ones I've read. So before the coffee gets cold, this is one of like the most popular booktok books. I feel like this is like one of the first books I ever heard about on booktok. I give this book a 4 stars. We have a collection of short stories about this time traveling cafe. Each story is really interesting. Each story you kind of learn a lesson from them. I really enjoyed it. I felt like it wasn't amazing, that's why I gave it a 4 stars, and I wasn't the most hooked with each of the stories, but overall I really enjoyed it. Like I said, there's something about Japanese writing that's just really like whimsical. I don't know how to describe it, but I really enjoyed it. And then we have The Cat Who Saved Books. I'd been wanting to read this book for a really long time, and I did really enjoy it. I gave it a 4.25, but I kind of expected better things from it. I was expecting it to be like a 5-star book, so that led me to be a bit disappointed. But we have this cat that appears and helps our main character kind of gain confidence, and they go on these journeys together and they save books, and I feel like you learn a lot of important lessons, but they're also kind of simple, I guess. They're not the most extravagant lessons. I feel like a lot of them are kind of obvious. It wasn't the most amazing book, but it was very heartwarming, and I loved the little cat. He was so funny. And there is like a romance side plot in the book, which I also enjoyed. I recommend both of these books. I think if you've read only like English books, you should definitely try a Japanese translated book. They're just really good, and so you should give them a go. And then we have Everyone in This Room Will Someday Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. I loved this book. I gave it a 5 stars. It was a really emotional book. I would definitely advise you to check the trigger warnings. It does talk a lot about anxiety, depression, but our main character Gilda is really going through it. She is just really struggling in life. She also just can't stop thinking about death, and overall she's just going through it. So it's kind of a hard read, but it's also really funny, and I feel like it represents mental health really, really well. It felt really realistic to what it actually feels like to struggle with mental health issues. Obviously it's different for everyone, so some people might not think this is a accurate representation, but this is one of the first books I've read that really represent mental health in a way that I relate to. It's also just a really funny story, so I definitely recommend reading this book if you're up to it. If you're not in a good mental headspace, then it might not be the best book for you, but it is a really good story. Okay, let's go into the fantasy. I'm not excited. No, I am excited. I just feel like fantasy is like, there's a lot to it, you know? Okay, let's start with Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This book, I was really, really up and down while reading it. There was parts where I was loving it, there was parts where I was annoyed, parts where I was bored, parts where I was not loving it. I was so up and down with this book. Where do I start? We have like these trials in this book that's really similar to the Hunger Games, and we have, what was her name? Peyton and Kai competing, and they have a romance. And I feel like the romance was just really dragged on and repetitive. I feel like there was a lot of pretty writing. Kai was saying some really like flirty things to Peyton. They were flirting a lot. But I feel like it got to the point where it's just like, okay, get on with it. Like, I've heard you say this a million times. Like, we get it. You like each other. Now do something about it, I guess. I felt like it was just really dragged on. Also, I feel like trials in fantasy books have gotten to the point where it's just gotten really repetitive. I feel like so many fantasy books now have trials. I feel like they're not really that interesting anymore because you know the film main character isn't gonna die. Like, you know she's gonna survive. But like, there were some parts where I was loving the romance and I thought the story was really interesting. I can't even remember when I rated this book. I think I gave it a 4.25. I'm really up and down on whether I should continue this series. The novella came out recently and I don't know if I'm gonna continue it. I also really hated the ending of this book. I was so annoyed with the ending. A lot of people like recorded their like reaction to the ending of this book and thought it was like crazy and a plot twist, and I didn't think it was that much of a plot twist. I was more just annoyed because I didn't like the ending. I feel like I've gotten to a point where I've just gotten really annoyed when fantasy books end with a cliffhanger, even though that's obvious. I feel like sometimes it can be done really well and other times it can just leave me really annoyed and I don't want to continue the series because of it. I don't know. I'm really up and down with this book. I feel like I would recommend it. Definitely give it a go. Like, some people absolutely love this book and I feel like that also made me not like it as much because I had really high expectations. I'm really up and down on my thoughts about this book. And then we have The Cruel Prince. I'm talking about the whole series when it comes to The Cruel Prince, the Folk of the Air series. This series overall is a 5-star series. I love this fantasy romance series. It is one of my favorite series. The romance is so good and I feel like I haven't really read a fantasy romance that has a romance that kind of, I don't know, there's just something so pure and beautiful about this series and the romance. I love the world. I love the characters. It is a real enemies to lovers. The characters really hate each other and the writing is beautiful. I love this series so much. I wouldn't expect too much romance in the first few books. There is 3 books in the series. I wouldn't expect a lot of romance in like the first book. Some people say it's not a romance. I think it's a romance. Some people say it's like just a subplot, but I feel like the romance was a big part of the story. I just overall loved this series so much and I think everyone should pick it up. It was like one of the first fantasy romances I read and that also like brought me into fantasy romance, and just I have so much love for this series. Next we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is the first book in a duology and I have also a lot of mixed feelings towards this book. I gave it a 4.25 as well. I feel like at first I really enjoyed this book. I was reading it really fast. I loved the romance. It's like a rivals to lovers romance, but I feel like it got to a point where the plot was slowing down and I wasn't as interested. And this book is also heavily based around this war that's going on and the army, and I just don't like reading about that stuff. I don't know, it felt too realistic for me. It didn't have enough fantasy and the war and army part was just sad and I didn't like reading it. I was really loving the romance, but then towards the end I wasn't that interested, I guess. The ending as well really annoyed me. Really annoyed me. That is, I feel like, a big theme when it comes to fantasy books for me. I have a lot of mixed feelings. The world was interesting, but I also didn't like the like army aspects. I do have the second book. I don't know when I'm gonna read it, but I am interested to see how this story ends. If I'm gonna like the overall story more after reading the second book, or if I'm just not gonna like the second book. I don't know. I've heard so many mixed thoughts about the second book. Yeah, I do recommend this book. I think everyone should give it a go. Okay, we have the last book of this video, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I gave this book a 4.75. It was really close to a 5 stars. I feel like the main reason it didn't get a 5 stars is because this is the first book in a series, and I kind of feel like I need to see the whole series as a whole to know whether it's a 5 stars. But I really enjoyed this book. I read it recently. I had been looking forward to reading this book for a long time. I had heard a lot of mixed reviews, but I felt like personally I was going to really enjoy it, and I did. The main character is a prince of hell, and then the film main character is a witch, and a very interesting story happens in this book. It's like kind of a mystery. I loved the romance. I feel like it was a really interesting story, and I overall really enjoyed it, and I really want to continue the series. The ending did annoy me, not as much as other fantasy books, but it did annoy me a little. But I'm really excited to continue this series and I highly recommend it. It is YA, but the other books in the series are no adult or adult, so I'm excited to read those. It was just a very interesting fantasy romance, and I haven't read books like it. That is every BookTok book I'm talking about. I've almost filmed for an hour and the sun did set. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you got some recommendations, some books to add to your TBR. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books. If you had similar feelings or if you felt differently, let me know. If there's any other BookTok books you want to hear my thoughts about, there are definitely more that I didn't talk about. If you want to hear my thoughts on any others, let me know. And if you want to see a part 2, I can definitely do one. I'm very uncertain when it comes to making recommendation videos or a review sit down videos. I feel like they're not as entertaining as my reading vlogs, but if you did like this video, let me know and I can definitely do more. The last time I did a recommendation video was my romance recommendations, which was probably over a year ago at this point. So if you do want more videos like that, please let me know because I will try to film more. Thank you for watching. I have a book Instagram and a book TikTok. I also have a Goodreads. They're all linked down below as always. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, subscribe, please. I'm almost at 1K and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. And yeah, bye.